Hello, everyone. Welcome to our GSMA Thrive Asia Pacific session on building inclusive and sustainable cities through digital solutions. My name is Alana Cohen, and I lead our GSMA Mobile for Development Utilities program. Our program is supported by the UK Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, as well as the GSMA and its members. Thank you very much for being here today. I'm sure you know by now that the GSMA represents the interests of mobile operators worldwide. Within that, our Mobile for Development Foundation drives innovation in digital technology to reduce inequalities in our world. And our program, the Mobile for Development Utilities program within that, strives to unlock sustainable models that leverage technology to deliver energy, water, and sanitation services that are reliable, affordable, and safe. We do this through a few key ways. One of them is our Innovation Fund. Through our Innovation Fund, we support social enterprises that are scaling and piloting innovative models that use digital technology to improve essential services like energy, water, and sanitation. We run our Innovation Fund in Sub-Saharan Africa, South and Southeast Asia. And in addition to funding, we provide our grantees with mobile-focused mentoring and opportunities to partner with mobile operators. The output from those grants is that we extract insights and share them with the broader industry through reports and through convenings. We're really pleased that through this work, we've been able to disperse £9.4 million of grant funding, again, through from the UK Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office. That's been allocated to 53 projects between 2013 and 2020. And through that, we're thrilled that 6.2 million people have received improved essential services like energy, water, and sanitation. And the startups that we've supported have gone on to raise an additional £286 million following the grants. Additionally, they've developed partnerships with 42 mobile operators. As we dive into our session today, it's really founded on a recent report that our program has produced called Digital Utility Solutions for the Urban Poor. I'd like to share with you a few of the key takeaways from that report as we kick off our session. We know that the challenge is that 90% of global urban population growth is coming from now until 2015 is really coming from Asia and Africa. And much of this growth is driven by the expansion of informal settlements, where the majority of urban population lives in the least developed countries. And so with the challenge of rapid urbanization and climate change as well, many states and municipalities are really struggling to ensure that the urban poor have access to the most essential basic services. So why are digital solutions uniquely positioned to help address this challenge? Well, we know that mobile networks are increasingly ubiquitous and they offer communication and payment technologies that really can fill some of the service gaps. So for example, pay-as-you-go business models combined with smart metering often can really help end customers to pay for services in smaller, more affordable amounts and also monitor and control their consumption. And this helps utilities to have more efficient revenue collection. We also have things like GIS tracking, IoT, and machine-to-machine connectivity, which for both centralized and decentralized service solutions can provide visibility and accountability, also process automation for lower monitoring costs. Finally, solutions like big data combined with machine learning can enable improved planning and decision-making. So within these innovations, we know there's some really key features that are important for success, but also make these models challenging. So just very briefly, one of these is that we know innovations in basic service provision really succeed when they're tailored to the context. So that means considering user behavior, user digital literacy, mobile adoption rates are all key for each and every context. And we see that synergies between mobile operators, startups, and municipalities really are essential and can form these win-win partnerships. Of course, these are complex, and that's what we're going to hear a little bit more about today from some of our speakers. So with that, I'd like to thank you very much. You can reach us for follow-up conversations and for our reports at the email address and our Twitter account below. I would now like to hand over to our keynote speaker, Vijay Padmanabhan, the Director for Urban Development and Water at the Southeast Asia Department of the Asian Development Bank. And after Vijay gives his keynote presentation, we'll then hand over to Dori from Utopia, who will lead us through a panel with Qlue, RaddiConnect, Jazz, and Manila Water. So thank you very much, and over to you, Vijay.
Good afternoon, everybody, and morning to those who are joining away from the US and Europe, and good evening to those in Australia. Thank you again for joining this session on looking at how digital solutions help to build a resilient and inclusive cities. What I'll do today is to just kick off this panel discussion to give you a bit of an overview on how things are shaping up in Asia, and more specifically Southeast Asia, where I currently lead a team that's working on providing urban development and water supply sanitation solutions to cities across the ASEAN countries and Timor-Leste. Most of you would have seen this map, and as Elena had mentioned in her speech before, 90% of the world's urban population is either in Africa or in Asia put together. And by 2050, we expect that Asia would have almost 75% of the world's urban population residing here. What this is going to do is going to actually kind of build up the demand on urban services, and it would also be able to provide cities the opportunities to respond as urbanization hits them, and also looks at economic drivers for growth of countries in this area. But cities and utilities are faced with a couple of challenges. The first is to look at how planning functions will be able to address this urbanization and this growth. The second is to look at how infrastructure itself is created, how are assets put in place, how does planning result in better performing assets, and more specifically, reaching various parts of the population, whether it's informal settlements or different strata in terms of industry, commercial businesses, and so on. How is service going to be continuously delivered to the population? How are we going to maintain continuity in the service, quality of the service, and therefore ensure that there is equitable distribution of services to all sections of the population? And last but not the least, how do we look at financial management, and how would financial management help these utilities to become better creditworthy performing entities, or cities also to be able to set aside resources for developing more infrastructure to meet this rapid growth in the city and the population. Now, these are the four key functional areas that we faced with as we look at improving access to services in our part of the world. Just a quick snapshot of how we are addressing these issues through digital solutions. From the planning space, the city of Makassar in Indonesia, we're looking at spatial analysis to try and see how we could improve the planning and also the delivery of services. And no better example than what we are undergoing right now through the pandemic, where we're working with the Future Cities Lab in Singapore, which is an offshoot of the ETH Zurich University, building an engine called the Earthscape, where they've helped the city of Makassar to look at the spread of COVID-19 and try and provide the rapid responses to those specific areas. The tool itself is being now accessed by the city government to help them to plan and to help them to channel resources to the areas that are hit the most. In terms of asset creation, in Cambodia, we are looking at how we could address safeguards issues in trying to develop and create the infrastructure that's required to access populations across the country. Through a tool called Spade, ADB is working on an open source software along with various governments to develop access to a spatial analysis so that we could ensure that we address safeguard issues, more specifically in Cambodia, for example, on unexploded ordinances, which impact environmental safeguards and therefore allow us to plan creation of assets, infrastructure for water supply and sanitation. Through the tool called SPADE, we are trying to map and overlay these information data available in the field with that available through other sources on climate change events and try and then look at how infrastructure can be planned and executed. In terms of service delivery, we're working with the city of Baguio, where they're looking at flood risk management. Baguio in the Philippines is one of the very sought out tourist destinations, but it also has its equal share of disasters in terms of landslides and flash floods. With the city of Baguio through ADB's ASEAN Australia Smart Cities Trust Fund, we're looking at installing smart systems to understand the flood risks that the city is experiencing, but also working with the city in terms of developing mobile apps so that they can provide early warning systems to the citizens, and also trying to work with IoTs and sensors to identify areas which have a maximum impact of these floods and try and work on flood risk mitigation measures using nature-based solutions as one of the options. And lastly, on the financial management, in the city of Hue in Vietnam, we're looking at water supply, where through its payment mechanisms, through e-payment services, the city was able to, in the recent past, due to COVID, build up its database and try and improve its finances and not lose out when door-to-door collection of tariffs was impossible. It jumped from about a 20% access by citizens to its mobile applications to around 40% in 7 months to try and improve their financial and cost recovery. So these are a few examples of how digital solutions have actually helped cities to become more credit worthy and also to try and improve their ability to deliver services to their citizens. And we can actually see this becoming a very integral part of cities as they try and deliver services going forward. Before I close and hand it over to Dori to take us through the panel discussion, I just want to leave us all with a few thoughts on what we are undergoing today due to the pandemic, but also trying to look at the conservation of nature and looking at biodiversity, oceans and marine life, and water as a conservation measure to ensure that we are able to protect and able to preserve the nature that we are living in. That I would thank you all for joining, and please feel free to reach out to us at ADB for more information on the work that we do. I would now request Dori to take us through the panel discussion. Thank you very much. Dori, over to you.
Hi, everyone. Great to be here today. I'm Dori from Utopia. We're an urban innovation group for emerging cities and their slums. And we're creating a network of city labs across Asia, Africa, and Latin America to build urban ecosystems for these emerging cities. Essentially, city labs are urban venture studios to help build and back startups focused on making their cities better for the many, not just the few. We also help governments innovate for their cities. At the moment, we have teams in Lagos, Kathmandu, and Rio de Janeiro, and seeding for on track to launch in Dhaka and Manila in 2021. And so that's a bit about me, and I'd love to hear from our speakers today. I think in the interest of time, we'll only have about 2 minutes each, and I'll just kind of give a quick order, and if you don't mind, just taking over one after the other. And if you could each give a brief introduction of your company and tell us how you currently use technology to drive inclusive and essential services in cities. So I'd like to go, if we can, starting with Sami, and then Maya and Perry, and then Rahul, please. Over to you, Sami.
Okay. Hi, hi everyone. Thanks, Dori, for introducing us. Okay, let me have a quick introduction for myself and then about the company and the project we have done so far. My name is Sami. I am heading the internal IoT division in Jazz. Jazz being the biggest operator in Pakistan, carrying more than 60 million base right now. Uh, so we have actually started a project which have been initiated for more than a year ago, and it has been completing during the mid of this year. The scope of the project was to, in fact, give more visibility to to the distribution company in one of the cities in Pakistan, electric distribution company. So what we have done is that we have actually deployed a small device with the name of ElectroCure in one of the subdivisions, and what that device does is that it actually traces out all the leakages within that wire, which is going to all the households, and also measures all the units which each household is actually uh, uh, consumed. So, what happened through this is that the distribution company now knows that how many units are being consumed, and this actually resulted in lesser and lesser power outages. So, from this solution, right now, there are approximately about 37,500 households which are currently being addressed through this solution, and approximately around 265,000 consumers who are being facilitated by this. So, as an MNO, we are actually uh, becoming a digital enabler over here in this and trying to become more and more pertinent to in making the inclusive cities. Uh, I think it's back to you, Tori.
Yeah, I'll just ping pong right over to Maya.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for inviting me here. Please introduce myself. My name Maya Arvini. I'm from Qlue Smart City from Indonesia. And actually, Qlue is the most smart city solution with the AI and IoT technology based company. We have started ourselves around 4 years ago, and nowadays our technology is not only leading in the country, but also we are expanding to Southeast Asia. And in Indonesia, we start ourselves by implementing in the Jakarta smart city since 6 years ago, while Qlue is hasn't founded yet that time. Nowadays, we've been implemented more than 30 cities in Indonesia, more than 30 police department across Indonesia, and also within our portfolio product. First, we introduced the Qlue application, which is focused on the citizen reporting, and that one quite successful. And nowadays, after 6 years launch, it's the user is more than 1 million, and it's becoming very successful as well during the pandemic. And we receive more than 300 report a day. And during the pandemic, by May 2020, we also launched the COVID solution, where we are the only local producer that release our own thermal body scanner and also the mass detection. Again, the core technology actually is based on the AI and the IoT. And we are very grateful, even though this pandemic situation is not really a benefit for so many people. But our solution is really making impact not only to the country, but also to all those company or enterprises would like to have a better safety or secure solution for their company. So I think this is a good things for us, and we would like to replicate this not only across Indonesia but also expand to outside Indonesia. Yeah, I think that's all from me. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Perry Rivera. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Manila Water. I've been with the company for nearly 25 years. Manila Water is a leading full-service private water utility with 15 projects in urban areas in the Philippines, and also we have subsidiaries in Ho Chi Minh City, Thailand, and Indonesia. We have about 10 million, nearly 10 million served population in the Philippines. And essentially, we use mobile technology to first inform, educate, and communicate with our employees and our customers. And because of COVID, we have increasingly relied on mobile technology to bill and collect from our customers, which has been a very interesting exercise. And obviously, the third point is now we are embedding a lot of sensors in our distribution system so that we can monitor nearly real time what's happening in the distribution system. For example, in Eastern Metro Manila, we have nearly 2,400 data loggers, which can really monitor what's happening in the distribution system. We are very proud of the operating efficiency, especially in reducing system loss in our projects. I look forward to engaging with the participants. Thank you very much.
Hi, everybody. My name is Rahul Nainani, and I am the co-founder and CEO of a company called RaddiConnect. We are a resource recovery organization based out of Mumbai in India. What most people consider as waste, we consider them as resources and try and work towards diverting them away from landfills so that they can be brought back into the economy to be reused, recycled, or repurposed. We do this primarily by providing two services. One is where we work with waste generators to make sure that they can discard their waste responsibly. So households, offices, institutions get connected through local informal scrap dealers that we have formalized through our digital platform, through our website and app, where we can connect directly through these waste pickers and scrap dealers to ensure that their recyclables are getting disposed responsibly. And also on the other side, we work with waste producers. So your large organizations, currently we are working with the FMCG industry, where all the plastic footprint that they're putting out in the environment, we work with with our partner network across 20 cities in India to actually recover this plastic on behalf of them and help them go plastic neutral. The entire system is run on a tech platform where we've been able to incorporate the large informal sector through currently working on SMS and basic systems to communicate with them, but working towards developing an app where we can actually get the information from their side in terms of what is the material that is flowing, and also create a traceable loop where resources can be tracked right from the producer to the generator through our informal sector networks and recycled and put back into the economy where it can be made back into products itself. So yeah, that's what we are. Back to you, Dori.
Great, thank you so much. And thank you everyone for keeping great on time here. So I'll just jump into a few questions that we had for each of you. We'll actually start first with you, Rahul. If you could tell us about some of these partnerships that support your business model, particularly with government and large corporations, including mobile operators and others.
The vision of our organization is to work towards circularity of waste, where we see that the resources which get waste that gets generated by the producers is tracked back till the entire channel and gets back into the production cycle of making products back into it. So our partnerships start with the producers at the starting level, where we ensure that their waste is being tracked. So large FMCG companies like Unilever, Marico, Dabur, we're working with them to ensure that their footprint is being tracked, where then following that, we work with governments to help set up infrastructure where once waste generators start disposing their waste, they need a channel for it to make sure it gets disposed responsibly. So, with the help of governments, we set up large-scale material recovery facilities where waste can be recovered. Also, we work with the informal sector together because in India, largely the waste management that happens is because of the informal sector. So we work towards formalization, and they actually are the core partners in all the two verticals that we work in, and make sure that they act as our channel for recovering these resources. So we work towards, rather than displacing them, we've created an inclusive model where the informal sector plays a key role for recovering these resources for us. And then finally, we also partner up with recyclers and end of life disposal companies to ensure that once the waste gets recovered through our resource partners, we channelize that to recycling, and then the recycled products can be put back into the value chain for brands to create further products. Entire thing is linked with, currently we have certain linkages with technology where we are connecting the waste generator to the informal sector, and then the brands with the informal sector. The eventual aim is to make sure that the entire loop gets converted into a traceable channel where we can trace the waste right from the source till the final product that it gets recycled into.
Great, thank you. That's really, really inspiring to hear how collaborative you've been. And I think in complex ecosystems like waste, it can be a little bit tricky to involve certain stakeholders. So over to you now, Perry. Just wondering, how have partnerships, keeping on the theme of partnerships with innovators such as Luat, helped Manila Water reach the underserved?
We have been operating in a lot of urban areas, and the major issue way back at the early from 1997 was basic provision of water supply. We have obviously invested a lot in improving the water availability to our customers. So about 10 years ago, the challenge was really increasing the coverage of sanitation services. That could be part of a sewer system, and also we provide dislodging services. But we are quite successful in bringing water to the base of the pyramid through our urban poor programs. These are really the $2, $3 per day income. Now they are connected to the system through our water system, and we're very proud of that achievement. However, I must admit, sanitation service provision is very challenging to this market sector. And I became a independent director of Toilet Board Coalition. Essentially, this is a coalition of leading companies, including Unilever, okay, essentially by leveraging the competencies of companies to address the sanitation crisis. And this is where we met two leading companies, the technology companies. This is Luat, based in UK, and Lixil. Lixil is obviously manufacturer of a lot of leading toilet system in the world. If I'm not mistaken, Grohe is a brand. So we brought them to the Philippines to pilot a non-grid toilet system for the urban poor. The technology is great. It looks like it was designed by Apple, but the challenge was really the price point. Okay, the household level, okay, for $300 to $350 per unit, and that's quite expensive. And we are still looking, and we obviously shared this with Luat and Lixil, and find a way to value engineer it. I believe $100 price point would be something that can be with subsidy, cross subsidy with our current customer base. I think it will work. So this is still in the pilot phase, and we are obviously finding a way to build an ecosystem and addressing the economics of the service provision. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Perry. That's a really really pertinent conversation to be having, especially as our world becomes smaller through working virtually and remotely. With these cross-border partnerships, it's inspiring to hear that. So now I'll move on to Maya. How does Qlue work with? Oops, sorry. How does Qlue work with government and mobile network operators to encourage the adoption of your solution?
Yeah. So Dori, when we founded, it hasn't becoming a legal entity on the 2014, but the first implementation actually for the citizen reporting is for the Jakarta Smart City. Within 2 years only, the Jakarta Smart City is becoming the city of a role model, not only in Indonesia, even until overseas. So becoming from those experience, there are so many Siri that approaching us to implement the quite similar implementation within the city. So actually, our majority client is still government. Until around 2 years ago, we also try to implement within the private sector market. So now this is like becoming almost balanced between the enterprise and also the enterprise, meaning the private sector and also the government. And talking about the city distribution in Indonesia, because we have like 514 series in Indonesia, and Qlue is still quite small looking at the city distribution in Indonesia. So that's why we also strengthen our partnership with the mobile operator, and up until now we've been working more than 3 biggest mobile operator, so they are acting as our partner or channel when we would like to enter to the new city, because Qlue still only have the resources in Jakarta itself, centralized here. So not only producing the technology itself, but also, for example, like the COVID-19 solution, we combine the devices with the AI and the IoT base, right? So all the production still held in Jakarta. So how Qlue can be known, and so many city outside Jakarta would like to implement some of it. Of course, mobile operator help us to reach that kind of city. So I think is a very good business model, and we are expecting to replicate that kind of business model to another mobile operator that we haven't partnership yet.
That's great. Thank you, Maya. It sounds like that creating a really strong presence in a key location like Jakarta is a good place to start, and then testing the model there and then replicating out from there on outwards. Yeah. So next we'll move on to Sami. How do you see the role of mobile network operators in creating inclusive cities in Pakistan and beyond?
Okay, yeah. Dori, actually, a mobile operator or any MNO in Pakistan can play a very important role. Like the one which we have played earlier, through our connectivity and through investing the money in any vertical, we can be able to introduce new models over here. Like we have actually entirely changed the financial model, specifically in the electricity utility management over here in Pakistan, when we have actually deployed our solution with one of the distribution companies. So we have entirely changed from capex model to the opex model. So now, by strengthening this power the operator has over here in Pakistan, we can actually go in the brownfield and greenfield areas within the country. There are some initiatives which have been taken by the Pakistani government recently. Like they are actually started making new smart cities altogether from scratch. So that's basically a greenfield area for any big MNO like us. And secondly, we what as an MNO we are trying to do is that again I quote the same which I quoted earlier, that we are trying to become a digital enabler. So what we are trying to do is that we are trying to create a base. We are through our connectivity, through fixed connectivity, through different solutions like these, and we are trying to reach to the to and address the needs for all the segments within the society which currently exists. So, like the solution which we have deployed is the best example that we are giving the visibility, end-to-end visibility to the distribution company. What's happening as a result of this implementation is that there are less and less power outages because now the distribution companies knows that how many units are consumed, is there any leakage, pilferage during their in their entire infrastructure. They have actually shared some that distribution company actually shared some stats with us, and they have actually able to say more than 50,000 units electricity units uh, by monthly. So that's a big number. So similarly, we as an operator are longing and are doing and are trying to go for public-private partnerships with the government, and trying to since we have a successful use case, trying to replicate that similar model in other distribution companies throughout the country. Like each city in Pakistan have a specific distribution company for each utility. So we're trying to replicate the same model over the over the OPEX model. We are where we are actually trying to monetize the hardware for the distribution company, so they don't have upfront hit as a financial hit, and trying to take the hit on ourselves. And we are combining it with our connectivity and our end reach. And of course, then it comes the brand affinity as well, which actually from which we are trying to leverage and trying to make people believe more and more of these digital solutions.
That's great. Thank you, Sami. And I think this message of sharing data across companies, across organizations in the city is incredibly key, because in places such as the emerging cities across Asia Pacific region, we've seen that data is a huge gap, and because it's so dynamic, it's always changing. The real-time data that mobile network operators and other similar utilities can offer is, I think, really one of the key ingredients to collaboration, and also to really improving services, improving the way that cities can actually cater to their residents. Great, and I think the next question I'll throw to everyone, more around how we see governments alongside private sector actors, everyone from grassroots startup level to larger maybe corporations in cities. What role can they play to foster the adoption of innovative solutions that respond to challenges of the urban poor? And we don't have so much time, so perhaps maybe we can start with you, Maya, if you have any insights on this.
Yeah, so by the time 6 years ago, when even Qlue not yet founded as a legal entity, our technology implemented by the Jakarta Smart City, and then by replicating up until now, moreover the 30 city, even more than 30 police department in Indonesia as well. So how we enter the enterprise or the private sector market. So it's not easy, of course, because most of the enterprise market must look for a bigger company with bigger resources on place as well. But we also having 3 big shareholder as part of Qlue, and some of the new technology, because we are invent or acting as an innovator on some of the core technology and IoT, we trial or use in our our own environment as part of the shareholder companies first. And I think that's a very good reference because it's becoming successful. And like I said previous, during the COVID-19 pandemic situation, we are one of the fastest and the most innovative technology provider company in Indonesia. So that's why our technology nowadays is really looked for by another enterprises as well. So I think I can say the key successful actually is about how we can perceive the value when we are introduce our technology, either it is in government or it is in the private sector. When the early month like May, June, when we release our COVID-19 solution, that time almost don't have any local competitors that time. So while some of the competition is coming from the China market, they also having difficulties on importing their devices into Indonesia. So that's why the solution that focus on the COVID-19 is becoming so rare, and they look for the local implementer and also producent, and it's something like we can perceive and convince the unique value that anything that really require like local support and so on, you can contact us at any time. Nowadays, this COVID-19 solution is also implemented multiple industry that are very grateful for us. So for example, not only on the private sector, but something like in the hospitality and also in the hospital, in the hotel, and so on. So I think, again, this pandemic also is a bless for us, and we are expecting that can be replicated into another series and also industry. One thing that need to be emphasized actually, how we would like to strengthen and larger the scale. We are trying to enable our partner, and either it is a mobile operator or is another local SI. Because we understand there are so many local system integrator, our partner, our technology partner, and or like mobile operators that have existence across Indonesia. Because like 514 series, is require dedicated resources, right? And a small company, a startup company like Qlue, we cannot put dedicated resources directly from us. So enable this kind of partner is also a good strategy for us. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Maya. So I'll also throw the same question to Rahul around the role of governments and private sector in innovative solutions.
So I think with regards to working with the governments in India specifically, the issue is such that young innovative startups or young innovative companies find it difficult to actually go through the government procurement systems. So the government procurement systems right now with the tender-based systems requires organizations to have credibility and some kind of experience working in the past. And likely so innovative young organizations do not have that experience that they have been, to back that up to be eligible for these tender processes. So that becomes a challenge, having worked with the government and understanding their perspective as well. They are looking at, obviously, rightly so, they're looking at organizations that have had the credibility so that they can, be sure in terms of if there's a large enough project that the organization can fulfill it. So I think a bridge between, making sure that innovative organizations actually are there to solve solutions. I feel that probably the role of incubators or industries or universities could be given some more importance, where to ensure that innovative organizations get the visibility or get the projects where with governments, there needs to be some validation criteria for governments also to go ahead with. So I think incubators or any other intermediary organization, maybe at universities as well, could play that role where they validate and also give the basic handholding that is required in terms of expertise, if any, to ensure that these projects can get scaled larger than just pilots for small cities, and rather than that, and be able to scale up at a larger, city level or at a country level as well. Because to ensure that we're reaching the urban poor, the government has the maximum resources and the infrastructure. And as a private organization, there has to be that collaborative partnership where governments start understanding, that innovative organizations are the way forward, if not only the large ones. Yeah, so I think that's my input.
Thank you, Rahul. Yeah, and as an entrepreneur support ecosystem player, we at Utopia definitely agree about this. So moving on to Sami, I think the similar question as to both Rahul and Maya, but maybe an added dimension of do you think that mobile operators themselves see urban innovation as a business opportunity that could deliver financial returns?
Yeah, okay, Dori. Actually, this is a new vertical, and frankly, it's a very big vertical for an operator to have an investment in this specific area. Because, like I mentioned earlier, at least in Pakistan, government is trying to make the existing cities smart and to actually establish new cities with the smart model. So, Jazz as an operator is always seeing this opportunity as a very big one where we can have deployed, where we will definitely try to develop and deploy a complete architecture based upon which the smart cities can build up. Secondly, obviously, there will be, of course, a long tail partnership, public private partnership. But since, as an operator, since we have a certain financial backbone and we can sustain for a long tail partnership, so based upon this, operator can act as a middle party, of course, as well between, like Rahul mentioned, between new startup and the government. And over here, MNO can act as a bridge between these two parties, because obviously, whenever government is, at least in Pakistan, when government decides to invest in a certain project, obviously the brand affinity and the brand equity comes first thing in the mind. So here MNO can act, and we have actually doing some efforts in this, specifically in this regard, where we are actually nurturing some startups in our own incubation center and pitching them their ideas to the government. And we are trying to make some success stories out of it as well, especially in the artificial intelligence vertical, and including crowd management, traffic management. So these are the verticals we are touching by nurturing the new startups and taking them to the government. So here in this specific case, we are actually acting as a bridge, and of course, it's definitely a very big opportunity for us. And then we can strengthen on this. And right now, basically, it's like again, it's basically a greenfield right now. So Jazz as an operator is investing more and more time and finances and efforts to build up the entire base for this, at least for the next 5 years.
That's great, and that ties really well into what Rahul was mentioning of these ecosystem players supporting startups and doing a lot of the hand-holding and providing resources at the early stages to innovate. Thank you for that, Sami. And then now to Perry, a similar setup in the role of governments and private sector in the adoption of innovative solutions for the urban poor, but also how do you think technology and innovative partnerships can help utilities become commercially sustainable and attract funding to enable service expansion to the urban poor and underserved communities?
A great question. Manila Water is a product of the government's public-private policy partnership in 1995. Okay, so I have been handling government relationship management is part of my key responsibility. Government's role, in my view, is public policy and regulation. if government is able to implement public policy that is dynamic, that allows reform to be introduced in the water sector or other segments of the market, I think it's so natural for private sector players to find a niche in that market. So very important for the government to establish dynamic and progressive public policy, a very transparent regulation, and a very clear plan or and framework how government intends to engage with the private sector. Okay, when these are not managed well, then you have a lot of problems, and there will be the regulatory risk will increase significantly, and barriers to entry will be very high. Ultimately, if these are not addressed, this will mean very expensive service provision to customers, the public, especially the poor. Okay, so based on our experience, the policy that the Philippine government initiated nearly 25 years ago allowed us to invest more than $2 billion in just half of Metro Manila. Just imagine how government with a simple policy and clear regulatory framework can attract $2 billion worth of investment that is severely lacking in the water sector. So that's how I view, because private sector, it's so natural for private players to select what are the technologies, including mobile technology, can be appropriate in different settings. I am heavily involved in developing the information and operations technology roadmap of our subsidiaries, 14 subsidiaries all over the Philippines. It's quite exciting to work with the engineers within and other domain experts and implement this in the water utility market. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Perry, and great to hear of the work that you're doing all over the Philippines as well. So we only have about 1 minute, so maybe one comment, but I think it's an important question. So I'll just throw it to the panel, and anyone has a quick comment, please do share. So how can donors and impact investors support innovative solutions to urban development more effectively? If there are any specific examples you have, or just general inputs, insights, please do share in about 1 minute.
I could probably start, Dori. Going back to that pilot grid, non-grid sanitation system, impact investors obviously, or angel investors, are very important during the initial phase of the project, where the price point is very expensive for the ultimate customer. And during this, let's say, development stage, that they can play a key role. Okay, once that market is already developed, I think it's now our experience. We have 100% collection efficiency from our base of the pyramid customers. So affordability is not the affordability of bills is not an issue with them, but the startup phase, by paying for that meter, okay, especially if you introduce, for example, automatic or radio frequency meters, that's quite expensive. So it is during the initial phase where impact investors can play a key role. Thank you.
That's really helpful. Thank you, Perry. And with that, I'll hand over to Ilana to close. Before that, I just want to say that it's really inspiring to hear from so many different urban innovators, which is essentially what you all are, across the region, and hopefully inspires our audience as well, and to also reach out to you directly if there's any interest in your work. And over to you, Ilana.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dori, and thank you so much to all of our speakers. We really appreciated your hearing about your work and your thoughts on how to advance it. Very exciting. I think one of the where it got really interesting for me was around these partnerships and talking about the role of government and mobile operators and innovators. And I think we heard interesting views on how that can all advance. I think in particular what struck out was we heard about how in Indonesia and how in Pakistan there was really there was a strong push from government to digitize, and that the vision of a smart city was very important in those instances, and that was really interesting. We also heard though about how to break through. We heard about in India how it can be challenging, and in other markets as well, for an innovator to find its way through government procurement, and that innovators will need some support in that area, some hand-holding and some guiding of the way through that process. And then I think it was really interesting also to hear about how a mobile operator can act as a bridge between government and the innovator. And then finally, I think it was interesting, Perry was very clear about the role of government to set out dynamic public policy and regulation that really gives a roadmap for how private sector can engage. And I think that was a very clear point. So with that, we're going to have to bring our session to a close, but we're really pleased that you all joined us here today. And we thank you, thanks again to our speakers. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.